because you don't get very little people that are very young are famous. Most of the people that are actually famous are older, and it's often because they focused on the job they just liked and you just took care of their family and their jobs and just gained better at it. And at a certain point, people started noticing them or or whatever. And that's just like more of a lot of people are famous. Like the Joe Rogan podcast is a very famous podcast, and he just randomly kind of became famous. Like he worked hard for it, but it wasn't like, like very directly to become famous. He was just living life for a very big degree, and then at a certain point, people started noticing him, and he started doing those things, and everything he does is a part of his identity. He's not just a podcaster. He's way more than that, and he really lives that. But I personally, as a young person, and I see it around me a lot, is that that's not the way we look at things. Like I don't have a lot of friends, and I also personally find it difficult to do multiple things. Like it's difficult to start learning music instrument at the same time is to focus on the podcast or start studying again. Or even when I study, it's difficult to start learning something new next to it, and to kind of mold my identity more to a degree where I want to be, or something like that. Because I would like to be able to play a music instrument, but they're very difficult things to mold or something, to really especially maybe later on it would be easier to do those things when I have the resources, but I question that.
Yeah, I also question that because you often also have more responsibilities, so you have to divide your time over more tasks. I guess if I really zoom out, it would be smart to do multiple things at the same time, because you're putting your resources in multiple developments. So you could think about this as having different sources for happiness.
Yeah.
And if you're only putting your eggs in one or two baskets, it also makes you more vulnerable. Yeah. So, for example, if you only spend your time with your girlfriend, that's fine as long as the relationship is healthy and you're happy.
Yeah.
However, if you lose your relationship, you lost your social circle more or less. So having a couple of friends around you makes you less vulnerable. And this is just an example. So therefore, I think it's very important to have hobbies next to work.
Yeah.
So if you lose your job, you still have other things you enjoy and you can do.
That you also kind of identify with to a certain degree.
Yes, and I also think it's very important that you do some things. Well, that's actually more or less the definition of a hobby, which you don't do for the achievement per se. So playing an instrument is great, especially because it doesn't matter how well you are doing it. You can just enjoy it.
Yeah.
Because it's something for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's true of many things, like gardening or making a nice walk in nature. You can just enjoy it, and you don't have to show how good you're at it or what you will achieve.
Well, I think that has changed over the years with video games a lot, because I that's one of the reasons I chose specifically music instruments, because my hobbies mainly contain now video games, and with video games you can't walk away from an achievement. Every game you play, you win or you lose. You go up a ranking, you go to down a ranking. You gain points, you lose points. It's always like that.
Yes, but there's also something tricky going on there, because if you play a video game, the game will let you win in order to keep you in the game.
Yeah.
So the better you become, the more difficult it becomes to win. And if your abilities decline, then it becomes more easy again to win. So it really stimulates you and rewards you just enough to keep you in this game. Whereas if you learn to play an instrument, you first have to invest, and then after a while, you will reach the level at which you can enjoy making music.
Yeah.
It's more difficult.
Definitely. To get into, especially.
Yes, because you don't immediately reap all the benefits. It takes a couple of weeks and months of practice, and you should practice but half an hour a day for a while, and then you get a feel and you really get into it. So actually a video game, it's nice, it's like a cool hobby, but it's also a quick fix from my perspective.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That's because I feel right now is that a video game is almost, first of all, it is because of that reason that it always makes you win. It makes it very addictive, and it's also that I feel like music, if you become good at an instrument, the way I see my brother and my mom sometimes play it, but also when you hear a song that is very like good, well played, you can hear that the person is enjoying it, and that's and it's also a way of expressing yourself, and that's something that a lot of hobbies have. Like gardening can be a way of expressing yourself because you like to order your garden, and you know people can see that your garden looks good. But a lot of hobbies have that. Well, video games is not very much a way of expressing yourself, except, and that's something that I have learned a lot, is that if I play a video game and it doesn't go well, I can't express that through the video game. It doesn't allow me that to do that. So you sometimes get mad or something, or you start blaming other people, or you start. And it's a very common thing that there's a very toxic community in video games very often. And I feel like it has to do with that. Where I feel like if you play a music instrument and it doesn't go as well, okay, maybe that can be frustrating as well. But there's still a way of expressing yourself to a certain degree, and there's less of a. It doesn't matter as much if it doesn't go well. If you try to be a perfectionist, you want to play it perfectly, but that's why I'm very interested in music instruments right now and the idea of playing, because I feel like it's more of a natural way of expressing yourself and spending time as a hobby. Then I mean, it's fine to play video games, but I feel like there should be other things, more old school hobbies almost to do. And I don't see a lot of young people around me and people my age do that anymore.
I think it's the diversity which will improve your happiness. So do some video games and do music and do other things. Because if you would play video games all the time, then you also adapt to it, and you will not get as much enjoyment out of it as you had previously. So I think having a diverse day really helps. So do different things, make use of different abilities that you have, because you will also develop them in many ways. It also gives pleasure, just by being able to do different things, right?
Yeah.
So
just trying different things out to during your day, like playing music, going to work, hanging out with your girlfriend, playing video games.
Yeah, but the fun of learning to play an instrument is also that you practice working for a goal.
Mm-hmm.
So persistence, and you practice to concentrate on something, and in the ideal situation you find flow while you're like performing for yourself. And that's also a very pleasurable experience, and you have the feeling you're developing as an individual. And I think these are benefits which you also see back in other domains of your life. So if you can focus for a while, you can also focus on other things. So it's like a muscle. It's something you can practice.
It's a little bit different than. I mean, some things are similar to video games, I would say, because a video game can also make you become in flow, and you can practice that, and you can even put a goal and go, to a higher ranking or whatever. But I feel like it has less of how you say it. I feel like it is also less translatable right now towards, for instance, social context or whatever, because there's so many video games, and you have to find a friend group where that video game has been played to actually have people around you that understand the value of it. While playing a music instrument is in multiple groups valued, and I think that's also a big part of how a hobby satisfied to a big degree, and how far it's socially shareable.
If you care about what other people think of it. Because you could also like play an instrument alone and don't tell all the other people, and I guess the enjoyment would be more or less the same.
Yeah, but maybe it comes in there that I'm a little bit of an extrovert. That I do like sharing things with other people to a big degree. Where I like to play. If I like to play a video game, I like to play the video game with other people. And if I don't play the video game with other people, it's just not as much fun. That's the way I experience it to a certain degree. Just as like if I can play a music instrument and practice it, but if I'm never gonna do it with other people or never show it to other people, then it's a little bit like, it still can be fun, and I can lose myself in it, but there's a lesser degree in it, or at least there's something missing maybe.
But that's very personal.
Yeah, it could be.
I only make music alone, for example. So
that's interesting.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never thought that it was so personal. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So it can also be indeed like for just the personal pleasure of losing yourself in the moment and just enjoying it.
Yeah, definitely. But also like practicing your abilities that you can, and that you're actually like playing something you never heard before. You're just improvising, and it's like old people would say, it's almost if you tune in with something bigger than yourself, right? So you, um, and of course, like beautiful music gives you really great feelings.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So I often experience this physically. I'm listening to a song and I really like get goosebumps and like this cold feeling. Like this is really, really great. This is like
this was really good.
Yes, definitely. It's so beautiful.
Yeah,
you could lose yourself in it. But well, this aesthetic appreciation is around you. I can also have this with like a sunset or a flower or a nice person. Just like you can enjoy good conversation or a good cup of coffee.
Yeah, there's certain things to really lose yourself in the moment. One of the things I really enjoy is the sunrise in the morning. So I like to get up when it's dark, just so that I can read a book while it gets light outside. But that's one of those things indeed, like what you're saying. I'm really wondering how music is going to, because that's my perspective of music, is very much sharing it with other people. But it could be because one of the things reason I wanted to do it is also because I don't have a thing I can purely do on my own, and I don't have any hobbies, and that's because I used to play always basketball on a high level, and I never had time when I was younger to learn myself anything else. And the one thing I love doing on my own is basketball. But since we live in the Netherlands and it rains a lot outside, and there are no like a lot of places where you can play for free or you can just play and just shoot around, it's not really a constant thing throughout the year that I can do whenever I want, and it costs quite a lot of effort and planning to do it. So whenever you're alone in the night, you have a tired day, you kind of just start playing basketball somewhere. And that was one of the things I realized lately, where I want to like find a way to still do that thing and lose myself in something where I can just have fun. So I'm very wondering if music can be such a thing.